Now, I did make a quick error before. We do have one more presentation before the panel discussion, and it's from William Fairweather at the City of Whittlesea, who's been kind enough to pre-record this case study of Whittlesea's experience with planning permit conditions for affordable housing. And I think we've seen the complexity of a lot of the processes to achieve affordable housing outcomes, and this one is a real challenge. So enjoy this quick case study of the City of Whittlesea's experience.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Will Fairweather. I'm a social policy and planner at the City of Whittlesea, and I work in the affordable housing space. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming from, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that to any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders that might be listening in today. So today I'd like to present a case study. It's on Whittlesea's experience with planning permit conditions for affordable housing. This will specifically relate to precinct structure planning processes, but if you don't know anything about that, that's okay. I'll provide some more detail a bit later on in the presentation. So for context, the City of Whittlesea is a growth area in the north of Melbourne. The LGA is the fourth largest population in Victoria for local government areas. So that's almost 237,000 residents, over 489 square kilometres. And regarding affordable housing, around 3,600 households are in need of affordable housing within our municipalities. That's very low and moderate income households, spending more than 30% of household income on rent. And we have a really low proportion of social housing. Just 1.1% of dwellings are social housing. I think the average for Melbourne is around 2.5%, and that's already quite low compared to the national average. So I'm going to be talking about the Shenstone Park Precinct Structure Plan, and this is where we try to get the permit condition for affordable housing. But if you don't know what a precinct structure plan is, it's a land use plan and infrastructure plan to guide the development of an area over time. And the intention of a PSP is to provide certainty to communities and developers of intended outcomes, while also having the flexibility for detailed design. So the Shenstone Park PSP applies to approximately 628 hectares of land located in the suburb of Donnybrook. So that's in our northern growth area corridor. So if you see the map on the right, you might know some of those names of areas. So Craigieburn, Broadmeadows and Epping. So it's a little bit to the north of those places. The PSP is anticipated to contain about 3,700 dwellings with a population from 10 to 11 odd thousand. And the PSP was gazetted on the 28th of January, 2022. So it's relatively recent. So as part of the planning scheme amendment process to introduce a precinct structure plan, the issue of affordable housing was debated at a planning panel. There were two issues debated at the planning panel regarding affordable housing. First was the inclusion of affordable housing targets. In this regard, Whittlesea advocated for a 10% target in the Shenstone Park Precinct Structure Plan, which is consistent with our local policy. Instead, the panel decided to adopt a guideline based on another precinct structure plan, which is the Beveridge Northwest Precinct Structure Plan, which is located in the Mitchell Shire Council area. And in this PSP, they included a guideline that tried to encourage the provision of affordable housing within the walkable catchment, but it didn't have any specific target. I will note in this regard, Mitchell Shire advocated strongly for affordable housing to be a requirement in that precinct structure plan, not just a guideline. The second point, the panel decided to adopt an approach to facilitating affordable housing where it assumed most of the housing in the area would be affordable to moderate income households as defined by the Planning and Environment Act in Victoria. Whittlesea submitted that a lack of instruction for the provision of affordable housing would lead to implementation problems. And therefore, there should be some stronger guidelines about how that affordable housing should be implemented. And here I've got a few quotes from the panel report for the Beveridge Northwest Precinct Structure Plan. Just note, this is what our Shenstone Park Precinct Structure Plan was based on. In your own time, you might want to go through these quotes, but the key messages here are there is an absence of legislation supporting mandatory contributions. So they can't put that in a precinct structure plan is the message. And the second part is they believe including guidelines will encourage a dialogue between developers and council for the introduction of affordable housing. So we definitely disagree with some of those comments, and we'll see shortly how these have been tested in our first case at VCAT. So the VCAT case in question is 960 Blue Ways Development versus Whittlesea City Council. So this is a development within the Shenstone Park PSP of roughly 3,700 dwellings. So the developer here initially agreed to provide 10% affordable housing. However, they walked back from that position and they took Whittlesea to VCAT over a condition requiring an affordable housing contribution. That contribution included social housing as well. And this would have only applied to the walkable catchment and contributed roughly 30 to 45 dwellings. So the VCAT case. The VCAT found that the condition we had tried to implement was inappropriate as it did not explain how the affordable housing was to be provided and was arguably unenforceable. VCAT also considered the lack of an objective/requirement in the precinct structure plan meant there was insufficient policy basis for the condition, and VCAT resolved to delete the condition requiring the affordable agreement. So I think in this case you can see the VCAT findings link straight back to what Whittlesea and Mitchell Shire were advocating at the planning panel, that we need to get stronger requirements in precinct structure plans. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of issues down the track and miss out on a really great opportunity to provide further affordable housing in growth areas. So some of our key takeaways are there's clearly a lack of state level policy supporting mandatory provision of affordable housing, evidenced by the precinct structure plan panel's report. Second, evidence-based and justifying the need. We found the planning panel and the VCAT want us to provide a really micro level of affordable housing demand, i.e. on the suburb basis, whereas we kind of see provision of affordable housing on a more regional scale or a portfolio scale. So we need to get more all across the municipality, and trying to have a suburb by suburb demand analysis just doesn't quite work. Thirdly, making sure precinct structure plans or other strategic plans have clear objectives for affordable housing. This seems quite basic, but I think the Shenstone Park PSP missed out on this, and it doesn't create the pathway that we need to deliver affordable housing. And thirdly, in terms of working with developers and other parties, just look to confirm/resolve agreements as soon as possible to provide certainty. In this case, the developer walked back from the agreement and it led to this position. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way and we'll get back to you at another time. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks, Will, and thanks for going to the effort of recording that, even though you couldn't be online today. It's a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it, really, that case study?